Hello everyone and welcome to episode 9 of Off the Grid, the series where we take a look at tracks that have hosted F1 races in the past and tracks that have never been on the F1 schedule and then see if we can beat a target lap time set to us by ChatGPT on Assetto Corsa. At the time this goes out, I'll probably be sending it down some snow-covered Italian mountain with two pieces of wood attached to my feet, causing all sorts of injuries to my already crippled body. But in honor of that, let's take a trip back in time to a historic Italian masterpiece. The Autodromo Nazionale di Monza that we all know and love, located in the Monza National Park about an hour north of Milan, first opened its gates way back in 1922 with the combined oval and road circuit that we'll be looking at today coming into use in 1955. At 10 kilometers long, it will be by far the longest circuit on the calendar, almost 3 kilometers longer than the current longest of Spa and almost twice the length of the current Monza layout. It would need just 31 laps to make up the Grand Prix distance, and due to its such high speed, it will be by far the shortest race of the season in terms of lap time. With just 9 turns, 8 right and only 1 left, it would have the fewest corners of any track on the schedule too. Because of the high speed nature of the track and the limited heavy braking zones, there will be no suitable area to have a DRS zone, so all overtakes would need to be done using the power of slipstream. Formula One raced at this configuration of Monza during the early years of the championship for 4 years, in 1955 and 56, and then again in 1960 and 61. Phil Hill being the most successful with 2 wins in 1960 and 1961, with Juan Manuel Fangio and Sir Sterling Moss taking a victory each during the circuit's first stint, Fangio in 55 and Moss in 66. The ever-increasing speeds of Formula One eventually became too unsafe for this layout to be used. In fact, it was planned to be used for the Italian Grand Prix in 1963, but the teams threatened to pull out of the event if the newer, safer road course wasn't used due to the oval section being too bumpy and of poor quality. As you may have noticed, there was a 3-year absence of this combined circuit between 1957 and 1959, and instead the road course was used. This was due to the Italian teams, Ferrari and Maserati, suffering mechanically on the oval in 1956. When Ferrari's advantage over the others was their top speed in 1960, the organisers chose to use the oval section so that the home favourites could make the most of their advantage. As was an unfortunate common factor of motorsports in the early days of Formula One, the 1961 race saw the death of one of its stars. Wolfgang von Trips, who was locked in a championship battle, collided with Jim Clark. Von Trips, while attempting to overtake Clark, interlocked wheels, sending the German's Ferrari airborne into the outside barrier, through a fence, and into a crowd of spectators. Von Trips was thrown from his car and he died before reaching hospital. 15 spectators also lost their lives, making this the worst accident in F1 history. Although Formula One never raced on the oval again after 1961, the section of track was used for other races. Its final major event took place in 1969 for the 1,000 kilometers of Monza. So even though the oval part of this old track still exists, it will never be used in Formula One due to the safety concerns and how much it would cost financially to possibly get it to FIA Grade 1 standard. But luckily, we don't have to worry about any of that in the virtual world. ChatGPT thinks modern Formula 1 cars could achieve between a 2-minute flat and a 2-minute 15. So with the target set at 2 minutes 7.5, let's get into Assetto Corsa and see what these new machines can do at this old icon. So we're coming towards the final sector of our first flying lap here, about to come on to the oval part of the track. You can see it's very bumpy compared to a normal track now, and we hit a bump very badly there. It throws the car into the outside barrier and then down the track. Just shows how dangerous these oval tracks are, especially the old ones. And then we continued on to finish that lap and start a new flying lap, and going through the Lesmos, through Lesmo 1 and then Lesmo 2. We just run a bit too wide and hit the barrier and go for another spin. So there's very few corners on this track, and I managed to have an issue at one of the few that requires a bit of braking and a bit of actual driving, not just foot to the floor. And a bit later in the session then, my game actually crashed, so I had to restart it, and you can see here we're going again, no timer up in the top left, but this was my best lap in the session, and I decided I'm just going to do one clean lap and then call it there. So as we head down what is now the pitch straight of this great track, flat out through where the Rettifilio is, the first chicane, and into the still flat out Curva Grande. Again, The Delarogia chicane doesn't exist, so our first braking zone is going to be Lesmo 1. Down into 5th gear and getting back on the power really early as we now head into Lesmo 2, which is flat out in this configuration. Very easy to hit the wall on the outside, which I did in a few laps in some of the out laps, as now we go under the oval part of the track down to the non-existent Ascari chicane. Flat out left-hander as now we head to only the second braking point on this track, which is the famous Parabolica turn. Picking our braking point then down to 5th gear, then to 4th, trying to get a good exit as now we run down what is the current pit lane, what was then the pit straight with the kind of a pit lane on the left hand or the right hand side, as now we go on to the bumpy oval section, keeping it flat and very bumpy here. Just at this section we end up bouncing up into the outside barrier, which doesn't affect us, but back in the day it probably would have been the end of us, and I don't mean just in this race or in our race. As we get off that first turn of the oval, flat out down to the final turn of the track, which is the other end of the oval. Keeping it pinned, and this part still very bumpy, but I don't think it was as bumpy as the other end. It wasn't causing as much problems, but luckily we managed to keep it pinned, and now we come off the oval part of the track to come up to cross the line and set a 1:58.7 and beat the lap time that was set to us by ChatGPT. So even though I'd said that there would be no DRS zones around this track, on my out laps I was using DRS just so I could get around to do my flying laps easier, and it turns out that it would be possible to at least do time trials or qualifying with DRS open around here for pretty much all of the laps. So I decided to do that then to see what the best lap time I could do would be, and to see how much quicker it would be than the lap we just saw. So with that, let's give it a look. So as we come off the banking for the final time, we're going to improve by over 3 seconds by the use of DRS. So it just shows how powerful it is when you can use it for about 95% of a lap. So the target set to us by ChatGPT was a 2 minute 7.5, and we have absolutely smashed that with our official time being a 1:58.729. And I think that is the first time that we've actually hit the target and not just been below the upper range, and is definitely the first time we've been below the start of the range for a lap time. So ChatGPT was a bit off with this one, and considering how old the track is, how long it has been since it's been used, and it's not used by any other kind of motorsports anymore, it was never really going to be too accurate. But I think it goes without saying that this track or a track like this could never be used in Formula 1 anymore. Saw on my best lap that we ended up bouncing into the barrier and we were able to keep going, but in the real world that would have ended in a disaster. And yeah, just tracks like this wouldn't even be able to be brought up to modern safety standards anymore. So just have to make do with reliving the glory of these kind of old classic tracks in the virtual world. That's it for this episode of Off the Grid. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure to give it a like, and if you're not subscribed already, make sure to do that before you go. But until next time, thanks for watching. See you then.